First, I just want to take a moment to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. It truly is an honor to be here today. Mike had actually asked me to focus on collaboration, and so my talk is titled, "It's Time to Come Together," and I'm going to be focusing on the need for collaboration to push our movement forward for a more just, humane, and ecologically responsible food system. You see, I normally just use my computer, so bear with me while I have this remote here. Before I get into the meat of my talk, I thought I should tell you a little bit about me and how I came to this movement. I grew up on a dairy farm in Michigan. My dad was a pasture-based dairy farmer. We milked about 40 cows, but we had about 150 at any given time on 2 separate farms totaling about 200 acres. When I was a little kid, milk prices plummeted, and my dad was having a really hard time making ends meet. He was forced with the decision of whether he would lose the farm to the bank or whether he would enter into a government program called the Dairy Herd Buyout, which was a program designed to stabilize liquefied milk prices by reducing herd numbers. My dad wasn't the only farmer to get out of the dairying. In my town, there were probably a dozen or so small farmers that went out of business at the same time. These were all farmers like my dad, who farmed in a socially and ecologically responsible manner. And that's a picture of me and my dad that ran in our local paper during this time. My dad chose to enter the dairy herd buyout to save the farm. To make a living, we ended up raising beef cattle, hay, corn, and soybeans. As a kid, I spent my summers baling hay with my dad because I was an only child. And so that's what I did. I was my dad's #1 hired man. And needless to say, I felt like I was missing out because all my friends got to go to camp, and they got to go to the lake, and they got to have a lot of fun, while I went around and around and around and around and around in circles in the hayfield. Because in Michigan, you don't just have 1 cutting of hay, you have 4. And so just when you finish the first and second cuttings, it's time to get on to the third and the fourth cuttings. So consequently, as a kid, I vowed to never have anything to do with agriculture or the farm. And I was going to go off to college and live a cosmopolitan life and get away as far away from agriculture as I possibly could. After college, I ended up coming back. I was studying abroad in Germany for 2 years, and I ended up coming back and was working for a state legislator by the name of Senator Diane Byram. And Senator Diane Byram was the minority vice chair of the Senate Ag Committee, and she also happened to be running for Congress. And so she was out. Michigan has a year-round legislative assembly, so when you're campaigning also when you're trying to get business done in the legislature. So consequently, she was off campaigning quite a bit to run for Congress, and those of us who were her aides were stuck in the office talking with lobbyists and whatnot. Well, my time with Senator Byram was the first time that I met farmers who wear, I'm going to use the air quotes, farmers who wear expensive suits and fancy shoes. These were people that represented themselves as representatives of farmers and the agribusiness lobby. And they were coming into my office and they were talking to me about the need to relax regulations for agriculture, and that we needed to have more resources directed toward agriculture in the way of subsidies and abatements. And I asked why, and they showed me pictures of these big, beautiful, modern farms. And these were farms that they claimed didn't stink. They were so modern they didn't stink. Well, when I got to dig into the meat of it, I realized that these were not farms, they were in fact factories. And that the state of Michigan was letting farmers like my dad go out of business while recruiting these industrial operations from the Netherlands to replace them, and their neighbors. So it was there that I decided that this wasn't right, that I needed to do something to make a difference, and I became a community organizer, working with communities across the country who were threatened by factory farms. I spent the last 15 years working to reform industrial animal agriculture in a variety of capacities. And most recently, I joined the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project as the Chief Executive Officer. I also, my husband and I, we have a small farm in Scioto. We farm on 70 acres and we raise pastured pork and pastured poultry. And here's some pictures of our farm. And I have a neighbor here from Corvallis, Oregon, which is really exciting to meet people in my neck of the woods. So nice to meet you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project and what we do. We have a dual mission, and Mike alluded to one piece of our work. But basically, we're an organization, we're the only organization in the country that works exclusively at the grassroots community level to fight factory farms at the citizens level. So we are, I describe us as a triage community. We get contacted by a citizen who might find out in their paper or through word of mouth that there's an industrial hog operation coming in, and they contact us, and we jump into action, and we do whatever we can with what I call a throw a spaghetti up against the wall approach to stop the factory farm. We have community organizers, we have media representatives, we have attorneys, engineers, and we do whatever we can to physically stop the permit so that the facility doesn't move forward. Sometimes we don't win, a lot of times we don't win, unfortunately, and when that happens, when we're unsuccessful in stopping the operation, we work to provide tools to the community so that they can protect themselves and have some sort of safeguard so that they can remain safe from the water and air pollution that these facilities often bring with them. And so things that we provide the community include air and water monitoring equipment. We teach them how to work with their state agency, their public officials, and leverage their resources that they have to get the state agency to enforce environmental and public health and safety laws. But you can't just be against something, you have to be for something. And we realize this under the direction of Bill Wida, who I'm honored to follow in his footsteps, but they are huge shoes to fill. Dr. Wida often talked about the need to rebuild our local economies, and that we can do that through sustainable agriculture. But because of the vertical integration of the food system, a lot of the processing infrastructure that family farmers and ranchers across the country have come to rely on have disappeared. And so, as Mike mentioned earlier, farmers are being forced to ship animals hundreds, if not thousands of miles to have them processed, which is not good for the animal, and it's certainly not good for the farmer when the cost of diesel is $4 a gallon. And then they're having to go back and pick up the meat once the animal's been processed. So one of the things that we did, and this is through our project called Renewable Harvest, is we came up with a mobile meat processing unit, and we had it USDA certified with the help of Mike, and we put it into production at Mike's place to make sure it worked and to see what didn't work, and then we've improved on it with Mike, and we've shared those plans with other people so that more of these units can get out and get running. But the challenge is that a lot of farmers and ranchers often think that the mobile meat processing unit is the silver bullet, and it's not. You have to have a lot of other pieces in place to make the MMPU pencil out. And so our organization, while we have the mobile meat processing unit, it's only one tool in the toolbox, and what we like to do is we like to work with communities who are trying to figure things out, trying to look at their food system. What do they have? What do they need? A mobile meat processing unit might fit well into their food system, their local food system. It might not. Maybe there's some other things that we can do. So here's, for example, here's a picture of a community meeting that we were having in Redmond, Oregon, and the community thought they wanted a mobile meat processing unit, but they had a custom meat processing unit that was interested in getting USDA certified. And so instead of having the community come together to pool their money to get a mobile unit, we worked with the community, and we're continuing to work with the custom meat processor to get to USDA certification. It's costing less money, and we see it as a win-win for everybody. Here's a picture of our unit that was at Mike's, and then this is I put a picture of buffalo here because we've been working quite regularly with buffalo ranchers in the Dakotas as well as Nebraska, who are just having a horrible time sending buffalo, which are essentially wild animals, in trailers to processing facilities and to slaughterhouses. And so they really like this technology because it allows them to kill and dress out in the field and then take the meat in to be cut down. So over the last 15 years, I've had the great pleasure of traveling around the country to work with citizens of all types, either who are working to rebuild their food system or who are working to stop a factory farm that is looking to establish itself in their community. As a movement, one thing that is incredibly clear is that we have come a long way over the last decade. I remember in the early days, when I first started doing this organizing, the term sustainable was a foreign concept. Now it's something in our collective minds, almost on a daily basis. And when I first started organizing, I remember environmentalists hating farmers and farmers hating environmentalists. But the groups have come together in a common belief that the industrialization of agriculture is something that is bad for not only the air and the water, but also for family farms. And this picture that I put up here, I really love it, one because my hero, Willie Nelson, is right there in the middle. But this is an initiative that took place in Missouri and is still ongoing. It was called the Campaign for Family Farms and the Environment. And that's Terry Spence. He works with us now. He's one of our representatives in Missouri. Some of you who are involved in this movement might recognize Rhonda Perry, who's a farmer in Missouri, and she's with the Missouri Rural Crisis Center, and that's her husband, Roger. This gal right here is Terry's granddaughter, and she's now working with us as well, so it's kind of a nice legacy of community organizing. But this is classic, where people, two different groups of people, environmentalists and farmers that didn't have a history of working well together, really did come together and solidify around a movement to fight. And in this case, it was Premium Standard Farms, which then became Smithfield, which is now the country of China. It's really, I find it very interesting that food and agricultural issues really are sort of front and center of our society these days. And that wasn't the case 10 years ago. There are best-selling books written about food and agriculture. There are movies. And most recently I saw a rerun of a CSI, I think it was Miami, one of the CSIs, where the whole storyline was about the issues of agriculture. It was about a polluting factory farm causing people to get sick because they were putting manure on spinach. And I think this just goes to show you that we're winning. Consumers are also more aware than ever, and it's apparent when major food companies start tailoring their advertising to what they believe consumers want. I just pulled some examples here. I think my favorite is McDonald's sign that is that's off of I-205 heading into Portland, Oregon, that says "Foodies Welcome." And then there's Foster Farms, which has gotten into a lot of trouble lately because of salmonella, antibiotic-resistant salmonella that's ending up in their chicken because of a dirty processing plant in California. They are advertising humane. And then you've got Monsanto, who is really trying to promote themselves as being, we're family farmers, we're not bad corporate agribusiness. It's because we're winning that these companies are marketing to consumers. And so, in my opinion, this is the time, we haven't had a victory. We've had lots of small victories, but we haven't truly shifted the food system. And so this is the time where we really need to be working together more and to be doubling down in our common belief that the current system that we have is failing our environment, it's failing our animals, our farm workers, public health, our family farmers, and certainly our rural economies. Because we are winning, the industry is taking note and they're forming alliances to further deceive consumers. This is a list of organizations that I pulled off the U.S. Farmer and Rancher Alliance website. And it was so long that I had to put it on 2 slides. This is just one example of the agribusiness community forming an alliance to counter the message that is dominating our narrative. And that message is that industrial animal agriculture is unsafe, unhealthy, bad for the planet, and bad for our animals. In my work, I routinely have the opportunity to attend events and conferences and training that are put on by industrial agribusiness. I go to these because I think they're very informative. It helps me be a better spokesperson for our issues, and it's interesting to see how the mindset of the industry is shifting. I'm going to just talk a little bit about this slide. For those of you who've been paying attention to food and agricultural issues for any longer than 2 years, you'll notice that some of the language that you often used to see in the agribusiness world is shifting. The one that I think pops out the most to me is the "we feed the world." How many times have we heard we've got to feed the world, that's why we need factory farms, we need industrialized animal agriculture and agribusiness and GMOs and all the other things that they rely on for their companies. So instead of "we feed the world," they're changing their language to "I grow food for my family and yours." And this slide was actually taken from, I took a picture of it. It was from a communications training that the agribusiness industry put on for folks that they call their advocates, A-G-V-O-C-A-T-E-S. And the advocates are basically this network of folks that are all aligned. They have the same message, but they come with different faces. They demonstrate, they try to demonstrate that they're everyday people, that they're family farmers, that they're farm wives, that they're farm daughters, and it goes on and on and on. And they're very well networked, and they're very well organized, and they have extraordinary message discipline. And this is what we're going to be seeing. This is where they're going to try to take the narrative that we see currently before us. So from the last few times that I've had a chance to attend these conferences, I had some major takeaways. First, the industry is coming together like they've never have before. Do they agree on everything? Certainly not. But they recognize that if they don't build common alliance, they will be forced to make changes that will impact their bottom line. And impacted bottom lines is bad for business. Second, as I mentioned, the language that we are using is working, and they are changing their language to reflect the educated consumer in an attempt to not change their practices, but instead be more deceptive in their marketing. Third, when we fight, they win. In one of the presentations I attended last January, one presenter said that his favorite thing is when the ethical meat people and the vegans fight on social media. The presenter told the group, and I'm quoting, "Let them fight. It makes us look reasonable, and we win the public perception." So we can't let this happen. This is not an industry that's reasonable. They feed copious amounts of antibiotics to animals, and it's threatening the animals that we rely on for our public health. They treat farm workers, horribly. They pollute the environment. They externalize all their costs of production onto the public. And the list goes on and on. They're by no means reasonable, and we cannot let them seem like the reasonable parties in this discussion. So as a community, as I mentioned, it's time to truly double down. We have to shift our food system. In my training as a young organizer, one of my mentors once told me to remember that there are always strange partners in policy, and there's no such thing as permanent friends or permanent enemies. If we are working to build power in a coalition and we agree with everyone in our coalition on every single issue, well then maybe our coalition isn't as powerful as we'd like to think it is. Sometimes working in coalitions with people that you don't always see eye to eye on isn't easy. I know this from experience. I'm an idealist. I like to dig in, and sometimes that doesn't help us move our issues along. But I also know that our adversaries like to make some of us scapegoats while demonizing others. They do this because they know that when we come together and we talk, and we realize that we probably agree on more than we disagree on, that we are going to be stronger for it and better for it. We're going to have power. It's the time for us really to shed our labels that we have of each other and figure out how we can agree. We can agree to disagree, but what can we agree on? As we continue to reform the food system, we need to be having further discussions about what specifically the food system looks like, but we don't have to be having those discussions by tearing each other down. And I just wanted to, I threw this slide up there because over the years, the industry, when you're an activist and you're out in front, the industry likes to discredit you. And these are some things that I've heard said about me over the last decade or so. And this is just one way that the industry tries to scapegoat us or demonize us. And I wanted to share this one story with you. This is actually currently and ongoing. These are two of my favorite people in the whole wide world. This is Karen and Mitchell Crutchfield. Karen, she likes to go by Susie. Karen and Mitchell, or I'll call her Susie. Susie and Mitchell live in Lamar, Arkansas, and they are former contract chicken producers for Tyson. And about a year ago, they had gotten to this place in their contract where they were about 5 years out from having everything paid off. And they had mortgaged their farm in order to have the capital to build their chicken houses. And they were done. They had been in the chicken business since 1985. They were so glad to almost be out of the chicken business. And they were looking forward to a retirement and what that would mean for them. Well, lo and behold, 72 months out from the end of their contract, Tyson came to them, and Tyson said, if you're going to keep your contract with us for the next 5 years, we need you to upgrade your chicken houses. And so they went to the bank and they asked, what was it going to take to upgrade these chicken houses? And it was going to be about $250,000 to do that. And they said, well, why would we ever do that? We're 5 years out from paying off our loans, being able to retire. Basically, the farm is paid off. Why would we ever go into more debt? We're in our 60s. That's absurd. And so Tyson said, well, we're not going to continue our contract. And they dropped the contract. Well, not a week later, because the mortgage was guaranteed, the contract guaranteed the money, the loan for the chicken houses. Not 2 weeks later, the bank started foreclosure proceedings on these folks. And they did not know what to do. And so they got on the internet, and Susie Googled Farmer Needs Help. And she found our organization. And she called us, and she was in a panic, as you can imagine. And we jumped into action. We started connecting her with groups like Farm Aid. We got her on the phone with Animal Welfare Approved. There's a whole bunch of groups that came together to really try to help this family. And the reason I like this story, the story's not over yet, because they were successful. They filed a bankruptcy, Chapter 12 bankruptcy. They saved their farm for the time being, but they still have 5 years to come up with a huge balloon payment. But the reason I love this story is because, for me, this is indicative of what it means to step out of our labels and come together around human cause, real issues, real people. As somebody who fights factory farms, why would I want to talk to a contract chicken producer? As an animal welfarist, why would you want to talk to somebody who confines chickens in their barns for 6 weeks of their lives? But none of those issues came up. I was so proud of our community when these folks who were just as victimized by corporate agribusiness as our animals, as our farm workers, as the environment, as everything else, as family farmers. The folks who are stuck in these horrendous contracts, these unfair contracts, are equal victims in my eyes. And I was so proud of our community to put aside our judgments and put aside our labels and come together to help this family. And so I just wanted to share that because I think that's indicative of what we need to do as a greater movement. And this was last week we took them to Farm Aid with us, which was really fun. So they had a chance to talk to the media about what Tyson was doing to them. So the challenge that I'd like to leave you with today is for you to step out of your comfort zone. Whether you're Tea Party or Green Party, liberal or conservative, Republican or Democrat, ethical meat eater or vegetarian, carnivore or vegan, ask yourself why you're here and why you care. While we may not agree on all issues all the time, there are surely some issues we can agree to move together on to reform our food system. There is a role for everyone to play if we can find a common cause to move our current system to something that is more just and fair, better for our environment, better for our animals, better for human health, and certainly supportive of independent family farmers. And so, to close, I'd like to leave you with a story that I'm totally stealing from somebody, but I think it's really important to repeat it. And the person that I'm stealing it from, it's more of an analogy than a story, is the person I'm stealing this from is Shirley Sherrod. And Shirley Sherrod is this amazing woman from Georgia, and she was the state director for the Georgia Rural Development. And she was, you probably remember, she said something at an NCAA meeting, and her words were taken out of context, and Fox News demonized her, and she ended up getting fired or asked to resign from the Obama administration. And it all came out that her words were taken and twisted, and she was offered her job back and didn't take it. But she's an amazing woman, and we had a chance to sit together last week at Farm Aid during the advocates meeting, and we were talking about this very topic. How do we all come together, and not just coming together around food, but how can we link these other movements that are taking place that really have sort of the same values and really try to support each other. And she told me that she likes to think of peace when she thinks of coming together. Because, and this is, her telling me this story was very timely, because as I went back from Farm Aid and I was out taking care of my pigs in the field, the geese are migrating right over top of us right now. So I've had a chance to reflect on this all week long. And basically what she said is that as a movement, we need to be thinking about ourselves the way that geese fly in formation. There's always a couple that are out front, and they are trying to break the air for the rest, and the pals behind them who are in the lead are flapping fiercely, and they're honking to cheer them on. But sometimes the geese out front, they get tired, and they fall to the back. And two more geese step up to keep going. So, sorry about that. So I believe that we need to be thinking about ourselves as geese. Geese fly in a V with one or two geese out in front all the time. When the geese tire, they drop back, and the other geese take over leading the V. We need to be like the geese, all flying individually but working together to move the whole flock forward. When some of us tire or our issues play out, we need to drop back and support our collaborative partners. When we get to the final destination, we can talk about our places, but in the meantime, we just need to keep on flying. Thank you.